Hi everybody. The machine gun revolutionized warfare, and we covered that in a previous commentary. The evolution continued. In World War One, planes were mostly made of wood and things like that, and the machine gun could just really tear them apart. They started putting machine guns on planes, and they could strafe the ground, or they could drop grenades or something out the side, and then they started shooting each other down with machine guns, and that worked fine with typical like 30 caliber or something like that in World War One. But in World War Two, airplane technology had really advanced, and planes were all metal now. And you had to step it up to a 50 caliber. And some planes had 20 millimeter guns, things like that. But the most successful ones in World War II still had the 50 caliber, the P-51 or the Corsair, things like that. They mounted the 50 caliber, and it could punch through all that metal and do enough damage to put the plane down quickly. But when jets came along, they flew by so fast. And of course, they had more power. You could put some armor on the plane. Some planes had some armor in World War II, but you could put more on a jet, and they flew by so fast you had minimal dwell time for guns, and they had self-sealing fuel tanks. So if a bullet punctured the fuel tank, even a 50 caliber, it would self-seal. It could cover that half-an-inch hole, and you just couldn't do enough damage against a jet anymore with the machine gun. So the United States moved on from guns. They decided, since they had missiles now, that the gun on an airplane was obsolete. So famously now, the F-4 Phantom in Vietnam didn't have a gun. It just had missiles. And the Vietnamese planes did have guns. They would approach to closer range, and they could turn tighter, and they could get inside the lock-on range of the missiles and shoot down the American planes, and they were just really tearing them up. So they decided they needed a gun, and they did some testing, and they realized that the jets fly by so fast, and they're so much more well protected now, that you had to do maximum damage in the least amount of time. So they didn't need a machine gun, they needed a cannon. And so they did some testing, and the best thing they came up with is now called the Vulcan cannon. It's a 20 millimeter Gatling gun type cannon. It has multiple barrels, and we learned in the machine gun commentary that allows for better sustained fire because the barrels don't overheat. It fires 6,000 rounds a minute. Okay, that's 100 rounds per second. And it's 20 millimeter. It could do enough damage to a jet when it passes by in a fraction of a second to put it down. Now, certainly 20 millimeter and larger guns have been used in the past, especially on Navy ships for anti-aircraft fire, but this is when it really came into its own and it really matured. Kind of like how the machine gun had been invented before World War I, but it really came into its own in World War I. Similarly, the autocannon had been used prior to this, but that's kind of when it came into its own in Vietnam with fighter jets. And the Vulcan cannon is still used up to this day as a primary gun used on all U.S. fighter planes across all the branches. And of course, the autocannon became more widespread in its use. It's used on ground vehicles and all this kind of stuff now. And I have at times made the mistake of calling these heavy machine guns. And a couple of my friends who preview my work that have a military background corrected me on that, and I want to thank those guys. And so Andrew and Vince, this commentary is dedicated to you guys, and so let's go ahead and talk about autocannons. Differences between autocannons and machine guns. 20 millimeters is kind of the threshold. If it's larger than 20 millimeters, it's considered a cannon. So if it's a rapid fire gun, then it's an auto cannon. But I'm not sure that would track across into science fiction. I'm not convinced, because they don't always use solid projectiles. I mean, it may be beam weapons. It might be a laser. In that case, it wouldn't have huge barrels. It would be tiny. In fact, an argument could be made, the smaller the better. It may not have a hole at all. It may be a lens on the end. So I'm not convinced that the caliber translates into science fiction like that, because we're talking about different technology. Another thing is, since they're 20, 25, 30 millimeters, take for instance a 25 millimeter, that's an inch in diameter, is twice the size of a 50 caliber. So it wouldn't be very beneficial necessarily to have a inch in diameter solid bullet. Okay, so they don't fire solid bullets, they fire shells. They're like miniature artillery shells, little baby artillery shells. They may fire incendiary rounds, they may fire explosive rounds. It's like a grenade when it goes off. You may have armor-piercing shells, but I'm not convinced that that tracks over into science fiction either. Again, we may be talking about beam weapons. They may not fire a solid projectile of any kind, let alone an explosive shell or anything like that. So the size of the bore and the fact that it fires shells, I'm not convinced that tracks over into science fiction. So the main differences in science fiction is a matter of scale and use on the battlefield. I don't consider the Star Wars role-playing game from the 80s to be a canon source of information. It's not, but a lot of people are familiar with that, so it makes a very good example for some things sometimes. Now, in their system, the beam weapons were divided into 3 categories. You had blasters, which covered everything from handheld small arms up to what we would term a heavy machine gun. Turbo lasers, on the other hand, were decidedly artillery. But they had another category in between those 2 extremes called lasers. Because you had blasters, lasers, and turbo lasers. And lasers were your vehicle scale weapons. That's your starfighter weapons, things like that. They would term lasers. And so, for our purposes, that is the autocannon. And since my work is generally sci-fi centric rather than real world, I typically call these things vehicle scale weapons. But on further review, autocannon sounds better. So let's go ahead and go with that from now on.
When Marines and Army troops are overwhelmed by the enemy, they want just one aircraft, the A-10.
What we got here is the A-10 Thunderbolt II, more commonly known as the Warthog, or just the Hog by those who fly it.
The Warthog. It's the ultimate gold standard for close air support.
Close air support is protecting troops on the ground. We work closely with those troops to make sure that they're able to effectively operate safely on a complex battlefield. And we got some great firepower to help them do it.
Great firepower is the A-10's specialty. The Warthog is basically a gun with an airplane attached.
The A-10 gun is called the GAU-8 Avenger, or just the gun by A-10 pilots. It's 21 feet long. It's the heaviest gun, automatic cannon mounted on aircraft. It weighs more than 4,000 pounds when it's fully loaded.
The Avenger's magazine holds over 1,000 rounds of 30mm ammunition, spit out at 70 rounds per second.
It's effective enough to kill armored vehicles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, all the way down to small, soft point targets. We can use it against moving targets, we can use it against static targets, we can use it against buildings. Pretty much everything that a really powerful gun can be used for, we use it against.
The gun isn't just powerful, it's precise. 4,000 feet above the ground, the Warthog can strike within 40 feet of its target.
You can be assured that anything within that 40 feet is not going to have a good day.
The A-10 is a tank killer, and someone sent me a message a while back, I don't recall who it was, that they didn't think that the cannon could destroy tanks, that it's more the missiles that the A-10 uses, but I saw at least 3 of them there in that video. You see, the tank's armor is a lot thinner on top. I mean, just consider this, they have to get out through a hatch, and they have to lift the hatch up. If nothing else, the hatch is thin, but attacking from the top, it's more vulnerable, and they can destroy main battle tanks with the gun. I met a gentleman once who tests these type weapons for the military, and he gave me this image, and the Volkswagen parked next to this gun. Yes, it's huge. The reason the A-10 is so ugly, they designed the gun and then put together an airframe that would carry it, and they made it really tough so it could take a lot of damage, but that's the story on the A-10. And of course, that's a good demonstration of why autocannons are vehicle mobile as opposed to machine guns being squad mobile. You're not going to pick that up and carry it around. Also, note they said a 40-foot radius, and in some of the other clips we'll see, you can see the rounds missing the target. Well, that's intentional. But see, autocannons are also very effective against infantry. Obviously, it's like machine gun squared. They fire shells, so oftentimes it's explosive shells with a blast radius and everything, like a grenade. Now, let's say you're on the ground and you have a grenade launcher and you're taking on some enemy troops. Would you fire every grenade onto the same spot? That's not what I'd do. I'd hit one here, here, and here and try to kill them all. Because the area effect, increase the area. And that's what autocannons do. See, or some of them, say like the one on the Apache, you put your sights on the target, and it'll put the first few rounds on target, and then it'll start working its way around the perimeter of it. So let's say, for instance, you're taking down an APC. It'll put the first few rounds in the APC and kill everybody inside. Then it will start working its way around the outside and killing everyone outside. Or if you're firing on, say, a platoon of troops, you put the sights on the middle of the formation, it won't just kill a few guys standing in the center. It will work its way around and kill them all. A lot of people will be familiar with the phalanx defense system used on Navy ships. We've seen it in a lot of documentaries and TV shows. Anyway, it's a Vulcan cannon, just like used on the airplanes, but it's paired with electronics and a self-contained turret. But it's the same gun that's used on most of the planes that's been used for decades. It shoots down enemy planes or even missiles. And the same gentleman I was talking about who tests military equipment told me that they were testing one of those things, and they had 2 Abrams tanks, and they were staggered on a line, and they were firing rounds back and forth in opposite directions. They had one of those phalanx weapon systems, and it was firing and hitting the shells as they passed by and scoring hits consistently. This is a Cobra attack helicopter, a real one. And this is the cannon on the front. It's 20 millimeter, 3-barrel Gatling gun. 20 millimeter, that's almost 80 caliber. And this is the real one. You can see some of the aiming equipment there. Of course, this one is not active, but it's a 3-barrel Gatling gun. Now, it's basically a Vulcan cannon cut in half. They took 3 barrels off, and then of course they spin it half as fast. You might think, okay, well, what's the value in that? Well, the Vulcan is a very fast cannon, but a helicopter's main thrust is vertical, not horizontal. It doesn't have 10,000 pounds of forward thrust. And the Vulcan cannon would knock the helicopter backward, so that was too much recoil. So they cut it in half. They used 3 barrels instead of 6, and of course it fires shells instead of just solid bullets. So Cobra attack helicopter.
The only thing this snake transports is firepower. It was outfitted with a chin-mounted 20 millimeter Gatling gun, air-to-ground rockets, and grenade launchers. If you see this snake spitting in your eyes, it is lights out. Okay, so here we have a what?
This is the M197. It's a 20 millimeter cannon.
Shoots over 600 rounds per minute, and you only carry just over 700 rounds. You have to be a little conservative about your ammo, don't you? You have to really want to shoot that sucker, don't you?
That's right.
But the limited ammo isn't that big of a problem, because whatever the pilot looks at, he hits.
Obviously a helmet, but
It's a helmet? Yeah, so what about it?
not only is it a helmet, it actually can become part of our weapon system, where we can basically attach a railing system we have in each canopy to the back of our helmet, allowing us to slew the gun with our head movement.
The technical term is that the gun is slaved to the helmet. Sensors relay the angle of the helmet to the gun, so it copies the movement. Then the pilot just presses the trigger.
The Apache attack helicopter has a 30 millimeter cannon, and it's single barrel. It fires about 600 rounds per minute, which is about like a typical machine gun. Even though it's 30 millimeter, that's the same caliber as the A10 cannon, but it doesn't fire the same ammunition. It's the same caliber, but a lot shorter cartridge is a lot less propellant. It's not nearly as powerful. It won't take out a main battle tank. I've talked to 3 Apache pilots separately, and they all agreed that it'll take out APCs, take out light fortifications, all kind of things. Practically anything short of a main battle tank. They all agreed that you could disable a tank by blowing the track off. But in any event, here's some simulator footage. It's hard to come by real footage, but here's some simulator footage that shows the effect of the cannon, because it does fire dual-purpose armor-piercing and explosive rounds. Penetrates armor and then explodes. It has a 5-meter blast radius and 3-meter kill radius. So that's about 10 feet worth of kill. So it doesn't have to hit you to kill you. It can hit over there and still kill you. It's like a grenade. So anyway, let's take a look.
Preparing to engage. Well done, mate. You got him.
One of our engines is out of action.
That's a direct hit.
pretty useful to me. Imagine a grenade launcher that fires 600 rounds a minute, and there you go. And when I see this, I just think, well, this just looks like a machine gun. But it is an autocannon. It's 20 millimeter. This is kind of the baby of autocannons. Note it is bolted down. It's a semi-permanent fixture on the ship. This is the 50 caliber Madus, and this is the daddy of all machine guns. The 50 caliber is the biggest, honkingest one. So here we see the largest of machine guns compared with the baby of autocannons, and it's noticeably larger than the 50 caliber. So that kind of gives you an idea there. Daddy of them all, baby of them all. And here's another comparison. Here we see this is actually the same Bushmaster gun that's used on the Bradley. You see it is attached to the ship here. I'll wait for this little menu to clear. You can see where it's bolted down to the ship. This is a semi-permanent fixture on the ship, but the same gun used on the Bradley, and compared to the 50 caliber Madus, you can see it's quite a bit larger. And of course some people would say, well, now that doesn't look like a cannon to me. Okay, now what would you call this? That's a cannon. It's the kind they use in the Revolutionary War. And here we see a comparison. It's actually much larger than the 3-pound cannon. Wait for this menu to clear and you can see the full effect. So yes, it's a cannon. And for a further comparison, this is a Browning 30 caliber machine gun. See, machine guns are meant to be squad mobile. They travel with and function as a part of the infantry, whereas autocannons are much larger. They're not meant to be squad mobile. They are vehicle mobile. And speaking of the Bradley, as autocannons fire really rapidly to take down aircraft because they fly by so fast, they're also useful against ground targets because of their superior armor penetrating capability and explosive capabilities. The Bradley destroyed more Iraqi vehicles than the Abrams tank did. And that includes APCs and AFVs. But the Bushmaster cannon used on the Bradley is one of the most popular autocannons in the world. And it has a maximum rate of fire of 200 rounds per minute, which is a lot slower than the ones used against aircraft, because you're not trying to hit an aircraft flying by 100 miles an hour. You put as many rounds out as you can to try to score some hits. On the ground, the targets are comparatively more stationary. So it also has a burst mode where you squeeze the trigger and it fires 3 or 4 rounds, and it also has semi-auto where you squeeze the trigger one time, it fires one time. But it's very effective against ground targets up to main battle tanks. It can't take out a tank, but they have the tow missiles for that on the Bradley. But anything else practically.
The EFB can bring 17 hard-charging Marines into the battle, but it is no taxi. It's ready to fight, and so is its 30-millimeter cannon.
Guided by a high-precision day or night fire control, the EFB's Mark 46 weapon system is based around an automatic cannon that can pump out 230-millimeter rounds a minute. Unless you have some serious military hardware on your side, you really don't want to mess with this.
This can destroy any threat vehicle short of a main battle tank. We can reach out to a target in excess of 2,000 meters away. We can hit with the first burst. We can hit day or night. We can hit in fog. We can hit in the rain. We can hit the enemy with the first burst before he even knows we're there. When vehicles square off, it's all about who puts steel on target first. With this weapon system, we can put lethal steel on target first, every time.
So we could go on and talk about the different types and different ones used around the world, but I feel this covers the basics. As machine guns dominate the infantry, just mow them down, up to the very most resilient ones like Daleks and Droidicas, things like that. Autocannons just mow down vehicles, up to the very most resilient ones like main battle tanks. With a few exceptions, like the gun on the A-10 can take out tanks, but that's kind of the exception. Autocannons take out everything else but those. And as these are designed and built to penetrate armored vehicles, or in science fiction, shielded vehicles, good luck finding some body armor or personal shields to protect you. Penetrate a vehicle. How are you going to wear enough body armor or wear a backpack shield that can protect you when a vehicle won't? So let's go ahead and apply this concept to science fiction and see what each group has. Of course, the APC has 2 turrets on it, which I assume this one to be the particle beam phalanx, which is an artillery scale gun because it's the larger of the two. But this one has 2 guns on it, both look like they're pointing in the same direction, but they're each multiple barrel concepts. Looks like, I don't know, about 8 barrels each, something like that. The Gatling gun concept for sustained fire. And of course here we see on the front of the dropship there's a very heavy multiple barrel cannon. I'm not sure how many barrels this is, but it's a lot. And it reminds me of the cannon on the A-10. And here's another view of it from the side. It looks like it may have actually 3 separate Gatling gun type guns on it. But in any event, it is multiple barrel for rapid sustained fire. These obviously have significant anti-material capability, which will blow those spaceships just apart. They dominated the infantry with their explosive rounds. You can see explosives going off all over the place, look like grenades. That's what these things do. And of course they were multiple barrel Gatling gun concepts for sustained fire. Babylon 5's defense grid had 3 categories of weapons. It has interceptors, which neutralize incoming fire and shoots down starfighters. Autocannons, which shoot down starfighters and disable capital warships. And of course artillery, which destroys capital warships. So in the following clip, watch for these things. The Centauri fire in bursts. They fire and then stop, let the weapons cool. Then they fire and then they stop, let the weapons cool. So in controlled bursts, as it should be. And the Star Furies attack between their bursts. They attack while they're cooling down. And while the station does fire artillery, I think we see 3 shots fired. Most of the hits are from the autocannons. And watch carefully about what they hit.
Interceptors fired. 1 through 5, break and attack. Everybody else with me. Interceptors running hot. 90% capacity and dropping.
They're getting through.
Launch everything we've got. Time on target.
Time on target eye. Hold on. Registering massive damage to Centauri vessel.
Scramble all medical ships. There's still time.
It's too late.
Oh my God.
There's a lot going on in this clip. Now that we've learned a little bit about weapon types and things and what you have to do and not do, they actually thought this through. And it makes a lot of sense. And they were trying to disable the Centauri ship. That's why they were firing mostly their autocannons. They hit the Centauri weapons. To disarm and disable the ship, they destroyed it by accident. So that's a distinction I didn't make back in my Babtech days. I just thought of these weapons as all being artillery. And the artillery, though, quickly destroyed an Omega-class ship in Severed Dreams. And it's this certain distinction here. They do use combined arms tactics. They were using their autocannons on the Centauri ship. The station's defenses are more capable than we probably previously thought. Force Thunderbolt has a Gatling gun on the front, and we saw it strafing the ground there, destroying some drop troops, and then a Vorlon fighter. So an Earth Force Thunderbolt, of all things, blew the brakes off a Vorlon fighter, of all things. So those out there who argue technology over firepower, seems like a good time for you to go ahead and make that argument now. Excalibur's main guns are obviously artillery, and it has some other artillery guns in the bow section, but also has some Gatling gun type autocannons, which are set up for rapid sustained fire for anti-starfighter use. The land ram, or in this case snow ram in Battlestar Galactica 1978, the guns are obviously air-cooled. You can see the ventilation around each end and the length of the barrels. The barrels do alternate, which probably allows for greater sustained fire, but it only fires about twice per second, each barrel firing once per second, but alternating. Of course, we saw there at the end that one shot destroyed an entire squad. So the low rate of fire would make it not good as a machine gun, but it is good as an autocannon. Obviously, the starfighters for each side have autocannons, and they're powerful ones. And Galactica has several turrets for defense against starfighters that track and fire rapidly, and they would fall under this category. They're very effective against starfighters, but not that great against capital warships, as seen here.
Fire! Around Delta 1-5. 5 port lasers as she comes to bear. Coming around, sir. Forward lasers, lock on. Locked. Fire.
From what we see here, my assessment is that Galactica has several autocannons all over the hull to defend from starfighter attack, and they can disable capital warships, but they're not that great against those. But the bow guns, the forward lasers, he said forward lasers lock on and they blew up the ship. And there was another time where they used it to defend a planet from a bunch of missiles. So my assessment is that they have a lot of autocannons, and then the bow gun is an artillery piece. They have one heavy gun on the front, and then the rest are autocannons for defense. In Battlestar Galactica 2003, they use machine guns, autocannons, artillery, the whole 9 yards, and they use good combined arms tactics. And there are a lot of tech snobs out there in sci-fi that say, okay, well, if they're firing projectiles and stuff, it's just not any good if it's not a beam weapon or something. But consider, autocannons fire explosives. And watch the rapid rate of fire and look at all the explosions surrounding Galactica because autocannons fire explosive shells. And watch this with that mindset. notice in a lot of these shows so far, they use a lot of combined arms tactics, and this is certainly a good case of that. It's good to have guns that put out medium firepower very rapidly, in combination with guns that put out a lot of firepower, but at a slower rate. And so your artillery and your autocannons, that way you have the advantages of both kinds working together. In the Doctor Who episode Hell Bent, we see these gunships, and they seem to have some rotary cannons on the front and some single barrel cannons on the side. These are obviously autocannons, and you can see from the side here, it looks like they're multiple barrel rotary cannons, Gatling gun type concept for heat management. But you can see the scale next to the Doctor here. This gun looks very much like the 20mm guns we saw earlier on the old battleships and things. Notice it is a semi-permanent emplacement, so kind of mounted into the ground. It is mounted out in the open, which will make it an easy target, but this is definitely a small anti-aircraft autocannon. In Buck Rogers, their starfighter weapons fall under this category. In Flash Gordon, I couldn't identify any. I couldn't identify any in Forbidden Planet. Their artillery was rapid fire, and they had rapid fire small arms, so they were well equipped, but I couldn't identify any autocannons.
Colonel Carter, the gate has been cleared.
All right, let's go. Move out. Let's go. Move, move,
First of all, note all the combined arms tactics here used by both sides. On Stargate, they used real military advisors, and they tried to incorporate real military tactics, and that's one of the reasons why it's one of the best shows. If you haven't seen it, you really should. Anyway, the Elkish was using its autocannons for strafing ground troops, and then the gliders were using their autocannons for air-to-air attack against the Elkish. And of course, then there's the staff cannon, which blurs the lines a little bit. It's mounted on a tripod. It travels with and functions as a part of the infantry, so that's like a machine gun, and in this case they were certainly using it like a machine gun. But it doesn't have very rapid fire compared to a machine gun. It certainly has the firepower of an autocannon, and it certainly has the size of an autocannon. So is this a really heavy machine gun, or is it an autocannon? I'm not sure really how to classify that. It blurs the lines a bit. And of course they have rail guns, which blur the lines a little too.
If you don't mind my asking, Colonel, deploy what exactly?
We brought along a few rail guns. They were originally slated for Prometheus to replace their current close-in armament on our next refit. They will deliver an impact velocity of Mach 5 at 250 miles. A standard magazine will hold 10,000 rounds.
Whoa.
have a small barrel, and then they have a high rate of fire, which is more like an autocannon. But the performance, as far as range and everything, sounds more like artillery. That's a lot longer range than any real-life cannon-based artillery. Now, they do use them aboard ship, but they use them more like autocannons for starfighter defense. They use them for capital ship combat, but they're not very good at it, mostly taking on the Wraith hive ships, which are miles long, and they're so large that the railguns just can't do enough damage to them. So certainly on board ship they're used like an autocannon, so I'm tempted to consider this more an autocannon, but it could certainly fall in either category. It blurs the lines a bit. It is interesting in ship-to-ship combat because the Daedalus has shields and autocannons. The Wraith ships have no shields, but they have artillery. So you have heavy firepower versus shields, and then just moderate firepower versus no shields but a huge ship. So it's there's a bit of a story to their battles.
Dakota to Paris. What's your status?
We're fine.
This is the only instance I can think of the Federation using air power to support troops on the ground. Now, in Northern Battle to the Strong, they had hoppers, but it was made clear in that episode that the troops were defending the craft, not the craft defending the troops. But obviously this shuttle taking out that semi, that's impressive and usable firepower. They really should do it more often. Yes, we're going to talk about this gun again because I like it. Is it a heavy machine gun? Is it artillery? Is it an autocannon? A case could be made for any of those categories, but right now let's make the case for autocannon. It's the right size for an autocannon. It's the right firepower for an autocannon. It has some setup time, which suggests it's a semi-fixed position. It does rotate from side to side. If you look very carefully, they rotated it into place as they walked away. But whatever category it fills, it has the same advantages and disadvantages, but those advantages and disadvantages increase or decrease in importance depending on the role it's used to fill. It has significant firepower. It has the ability to sustain fire for a while. It did overheat, but not until they overcranked it. It was doing fine until they overcranked it. It is semi-fixed, so it's not very mobile as a disadvantage. It does have a large profile, which makes it an easy target as a disadvantage. And it has been suggested to me that maybe this thing was rigged on the spot, and that would explain why it's not easily categorized. And let's just take a look.
Now, that entry may have stood up against hand lasers, but we can transmit the ship's power against it, enough to blast half a continent.
Engineering deck will rig to transmit ship's power. We'll try blasting through that metal.
They did say engineering will rig, so it's possible they just rigged it on the spot, and that would explain why it doesn't fit in a category cleanly, and also why we never saw it again. A lot of old ships from Kirk's era we used in the Deep Space Nine era for the Dominion War, and I've talked about that a couple times, and about how there's a lot more going on in a war than just straight ship-to-ship combat, and those are all useful for those things, but they are used in the ship-to-ship role. Now, this isn't based on any statements or anything in the show, it's just my opinion. But I think that probably the phasers and everything in Kirk's era, which were artillery in Kirk's era, are used as autocannons in the DS9 era. Like I said, that's just an opinion, but consider the following comparison. I count 3 platoons destroyed in 3 seconds. And it was blowing droid parts 20, 30 feet up into the air. So that's very impressive. And we saw them destroy some wheel droids, which are larger targets as well. And they were used in the Clone Wars for anti-starfighter use. So these are very impressive autocannons, particularly against the infantry. Also on the AT-AT, it has 2 different scale of cannons. These, when you crank them, are obviously artillery scale. These are more rapid fire guns, which we see them using them on aircraft and personnel. So autocannons, but let's see the rapid fire capability of those. It's literally firing every few frames. Here we see these X-Wings take out a skyscraper with a quick strafing run. Those are, of course, autocannons. That's a lot of firepower. All of the starfighter weapons and actually most of these shows would fall under this category. And in Star Wars, the speeder weapons like the snow speeder guns, the Millennium Falcons turrets, the Ghost turrets, all of those things would fall under this category. They have quite a few in Star Wars. And of course the E-Web kind of blurs the lines, machine gun and autocannon. It is easily large enough to be an autocannon. It's easily as large as some of the ones we've looked at. It obviously has significant anti-material capability because they're preparing to split the Falcon wide open with it. But it's squad mobile. Half a dozen guys came running in, set it up on a tripod, and began firing in about 20 seconds. It's not bolted down. It's not a permanent fixture. It travels with and functions as a part of the infantry. So it fits more requirements of machine gun, even though it has the size and firepower of an autocannon. So it blurs the lines a little bit. And of course in The Last Starfighter, the Gunstar guns are autocannons, as are most starfighter guns. So to recap, the autocannon is the next step in the evolution of the machine gun. It's like machine gun squared. They fire shells rather than bullets. But the lines are a bit blurred in sci-fi. You can't go just by barrel size or whether they fire shells or not. Sometimes, but not all the time. And we're talking about sci-fi stuff, or at least the groups I cover in general. So it's a bit more blurred. It's mostly determined by scale and the role it serves on the battlefield. It's between the machine gun and artillery, vehicle scale weapons. Now back when we were discussing APCs and AFVs, I said at the time, let's just consider this one category and simplify. The main difference is, in real life, is whether it has an autocannon or not. But it may be the same vehicle underneath. It may be the same M113. It has a 50 caliber, or it might have a 20 millimeter. Well, that's an AFV and APC. But the lines are a little more blurry in science fiction, and at the time we were looking more for what the vehicle brings to the table. So I said, let's simplify. But in real life, it's whether it has an autocannon or not typically. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this commentary, and I'll see you next time.